Hello everyone, this is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, I am sure you already subscribed to SaugaTalks on YouTube. If not, please do so right now. Follow SaugaTalks on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and now you can listen in audio mode only, Spotify, Amazon Music, all the prime podcasting platforms. So please join SaugaTalks because I speak weekly with fascinating people in tech. And the subjects we're touching, it's pretty broad, but at the same time, the guests are fantastic, and we're covering technical expertise, we're covering business opportunities, we're covering talent, we're covering investment, we're covering a lot in this SaugaTalk. So please support by simply liking and commenting on the video. Really appreciate your attention. So without further ado, today, my esteemed guest is Djamila Amimer. Djamila, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Irene. Thanks for the invitation.
Lovely, absolutely lovely, because the topic that we announced is so exciting. You are, Djamila, you are an AI consultant, you are trainer, you're mentor, you are entrepreneur, and you're innovator, you are a global influencer in topics like AI, analytic, data. So what an amazing background. Can we talk about AI trends you're seeing out there?
Yeah, thanks, Irene. That's a really good question. So, because what we have been all through, the COVID pandemic, it has given a rise through the importance of digitization. And obviously, part of that is artificial intelligence. We've seen AI really accelerating. So kind of the trends is that we will see increased use of AI across different sectors. Some sectors are investing heavily in AI. So there will be obviously AI in healthcare. So we already seen AI being used to detect illnesses, detect cancer, detect COVID. We've seen AI used to do the triage of patients. So which patient will need the most urgent aid or treatment compared to another patient. We also have seen Moderna, vaccine, for COVID, that they have used basically AI to optimize the mRNA sequencing. So we will, going forward, we will see increased use of AI in the health sector. The whole of the IT marketing budgeting in healthcare is expected to reach something around 300 billion, and the big part of that will be around the AI. Another sector will be supply chain. Again, we've seen COVID has significantly disrupted supply chains. So we will see an increased use of AI to try to, predict bottlenecks, predict issues of demand and supply, and try to optimize the cost and the price of products going forward.
Absolutely. What we're learning, Djamila, is that organizations investing in AI, and for some, this technology driver becomes business driver. So do you see that kind of, yes, trend out there? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, companies and enterprises are now buying in to, to the story behind AI, and they're not adopting AI for the sake of adopting AI. They're really adopting it for, good business reasons. So when you ask companies what are the top reasons to why they're adopting AI, the three top reasons are around cost savings. Mm-hmm. That comes a lot, efficiencies, and basically increasing markets by targeting, customers in a better way.
Mm-hmm. Just lately, I found an article where one of the top AI drivers is actually cybersecurity. So
yes, that's another one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So AI now help to predict the risk, right? To help to identify incidents before they occur. Is that right?
Absolutely. And now we find AI. I think it's very hard to find any sector who hasn't either applied AI or thinking about applying AI. We see AI in manufacturing, in in healthcare, in supply chain, in contracts and procurement. everywhere, legal, financial services, everyone is embracing AI with different levels, obviously.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some barriers and challenges, all right? Because there is shiny toy out there, right? Company learning about the exciting opportunities to invest and to find the quick returns. Question is, right, when it comes to adoption, how do you advise your clients in terms of this low-hanging fruit, the project that will have the most impact?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because even though when you ask CEOs and CIOs and business executive whether they're willing to to adopt AI, everyone is saying yes. But then when you go into the ground, we see there is a high rate of failure. When it comes to applying AI at project level, and this is due to a lot of reasons. One is around a lack of AI education. There isn't a lot of business people in the business who understand AI or what AI can do for them, or how to use AI. So that's one thing. There is also a lack of AI capability. So most of the time, companies, even though they're trying to build their own internal, teams. Most of them, they go externally, to consultants or to pick, tech companies, and unless you go to the right, body, you may get into the wrong trouble, because sometimes they have different culture. Maybe the tech company doesn't understand the business knowledge. So there are like a lot of problems in adopting AI and implementing AI on the ground. I think for me, as someone who has been advising organizations and businesses in applying AI, my advice to them is think of AI as a tool. Don't think of it as an end on itself. It's not an end. You should always start with your problem, not with your AI, not with AI. So understand your problem, your problem statement, frame it, how you are going to tackle it, and then among the different ways you can tackle it, one of them is AI. So never start with AI. You should always start with the business context, and that's sometimes what is missing in the in practice.
Good. Wow. This is really very practical, pragmatic approach you're describing, Djamila. So question is, how do you capitalize on the AI potential? Because we've seen lots of disappointments earlier years, right? So companies invested and they did not invest wisely. They lost that investment and, most importantly, credibility. Because if you're a leader of the project that's not bringing business results, the consequences are biting you down the road, right? So how do you navigate around, around
Yeah,
those, early?
I guess how you will navigate will be very linked to kind of the company profile, whether they're like an early adopter, whether they know nothing about AI, how far are they in their AI journey. But I think kind of with AI, you need to experiment. So kind of like, one of the biggest also kind of mistake companies do is they invest heavily at the beginning in one way or in one platform or in one tool. Whether they should, my advice for them is to experiment with different tools, with different projects. Try to find those low hanging fruit project, and try to use AI in that, and then scale it in time.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, Djamila. So what about the strategy advice that you provide to the clients in a way that they need to strategize, they need to be a little more forward thinking, because these projects, they don't bring investment, return on investment in the next 3 months, right? It's got to be longer road they have to plan for. So how do you kind of condition your clients so they are on the right path?
Yeah. So I think kind of, when we advise our clients at Mindsense Global, what we do is what we call an AI strategy review. So what we do is, so for example, if the client is from is a bank, in the financial services sector, we will do like a deep dive review on the financial services. So we will show the client how different companies are using AI in financial services, and we will show them how they rank compared to their competitors, because you have to see AI as a tool that can give you that competitive advantage. So if you want to use AI, you want first to know how your competitors or your, the other firms are using AI or not yet. So you need to find like a niche area that will give you that competitive advantage. And they could be, I don't know, 10, maybe 20, 30 ways on how you use AI. You will have to find the one that will add the most value to your company.
Could you provide an example? Okay, we don't need to name your clients' names, but could you give us a use case where a company really capitalized, right, invested in technology and saw the business outcome that really inspiring?
Yeah, so if you look, for example, in health and safety, domain or sector in general, you can find that, for example, depending which company you are in, there are like some gaps in terms of there are companies who are like heavily investing in AI to use AI, for example, to spot health and safety incidents. But through videos, through cameras, they're trying to predict even the incident before happening. And that could be in a refinery, if you are like an oil and gas company, or it could be in a ship, if you are like a shipping company, or, it could be in a manufacturer, like, infrastructure, if you're a manufacturer. So one way to reduce like downtime, costs. So if you can predict when something is going to happen, and make remedies, so then you avoid that incident happening, that surely is going to save you money in the future. Not only money, but like also kind of health wise, in terms of the health of your employees and the safety of your assets and so on. And that way you could gain competitive advantage compared to your other competitors who haven't used AI for its predictive power. So it's predicting the incidents that could happen in the future and avoiding them today.
Lovely, lovely. Djamila, I love discussing, human with machine kind of interaction benefiting humans, hopefully.
Yes.
So can we please dive into where do you see the most promising area in a way that decision makers, they need to take this in AI recommendations, that input, right? So how we as humans able to consume that input and make better decisions that will benefit business and humanity in general?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it goes like a lot deeper in terms of the AI ethics and the AI transparency. Obviously, there are different people with different views, in this topic. My own view is that we should almost have a human in the chain. We shouldn't, at least the current AI we have is not developed enough to be able to make its own decision. We know that there are a lot of failures, and I can give a lot of example where AI has failed in the past. So I'm in the view that we should always have a human in the loop before that final decision is made. And whether you are like in security or at bank, or for example, there is you could, for example, if someone is applying for a bank loan, so the AI or the machine learning algorithm is going to try to predict the outcome, whether to loan, kind of give the money to, kind of to the client or not, based on the credit score and the different factors it takes into account. But I think kind of before making that final decision to say yes or no, a human person should kind of have the final say into it. And not only because it's good to have, but also from a regulation point of view. So for example, under the GDPR, like EU regulation. So as well, because I'm in Britain and we know we had the Brexit, so things may work differently. But as an EU citizen, if I was like an EU citizen and I apply for a bank and I get rejected, I have the right to go to the court or go to the company and ask for an explanation how the algorithm came up with the decision. So unless you really know your system and how the AI system works, and you have human, human kind of like points, along, that decision loop, you wouldn't be able to explain that. At least not kind of now, with the current AI we have. So this is why I think it's always good to have, at some point, a human being, kind of like overlooking that decision making process.
By implementing advanced technologies, we're shaking up not only commerce, we're shaking up, like you said, healthcare, legal system, the whole fabric of society, right? The decision-making process is actually what lies in economic decisions and political decisions, in everyday decisions, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think it's not just the topic is a lot bigger. It's not just about transparency and explainability. It's also about accountability. So if something goes wrong, I think like the issue we have with technology, but in particular with AI, is that regulations and standards are lacking in pace. They're not catching up with the pace of, the way AI is being developed. So once hopefully, we always hope that that things don't go wrong, but we know that in reality things go wrong in practice. So when something goes wrong, we need to have like a clear accountability in terms of who is accountable. So if we take the example of a driverless car. So let's assume for the worst scenario, we have a driverless car and it's involved in an accident and someone has died from that accident. So who's accountable from a legal perspective on that incident? Is it the manufacturer who has manufactured the car? Is it the AI or the IT company who has developed the AI software? Or is it the company or the individual who has trained that AI system? Who is accountable? And from my perspective is there isn't one person or one entity who's accountable. That accountability has to be split along the chain of that whole operation. So someone will be accountable at the software side, the manufacturer. We need that kind of regulation or a system or a standard that make that clear, because right now we don't have it.
I'm with you on this, Djamila, right? And even if I'm not with you, the SaugaTalks is about getting experts to speak about hot topics, and I'm here to listen to your opinion today. So thank you for sharing this. Let's jump into human impact, because people still not clear how AI is taking our lives. It's taking our jobs. Is it replacing us all over? What's your opinion? How do we live with AI going forward? Yeah.
So I think that a lot of, obviously some of it is true, some of it is kind of like myth, because we have a lot of, hype around AI. So for me, the way I see AI is that different types of AI. The AI we currently have is what I call the narrow AI. So it's an AI that is only good at one thing. So for example, you have an algorithm predicting fraud at financial services company, and it can only predict fraud if you take it from its environment and you ask that system to do something else. It cannot do it. So this is why it's narrow. It can only do and perform within certain limitation. Then there is what we, most of us, AI practitioners aspire to in the future, what we call general AI. So this is kind of, the fancy AI where AI becomes intelligent and so on. And there are like labs, who works on, usually the big labs, like, the Google lab, the Facebook lab, the Microsoft, IBMs and so on. And some individuals like me who are interested in the research. So that kind of like general AI, we're very, very, very far from, reaching it. And then there is a third category, which is kind of the super intelligence. For me, this is the kind of the Hollywood type of movies where we see kind of robots and, computers taking over, and we become the slaves and they become the master, the masters. And I don't believe in that word. So it's, for me, it's, between narrow and the general intelligence, which is, we still far behind. In terms of the job implications, so obviously there are impacts from the deploying AI in different sector. So AI is being developed, especially to automate boring, redundant type of task. The type of task that can be done, are done like several times, thousands, hundreds of times a day. So we will definitely see a decrease, a loss of jobs in this type of roles. But at the same time, we will see an increase of different type of jobs. So we will lose the jobs that needs like the repetition, almost you are not really thinking, you are only kind of, executing a procedure. But then we will see an increase in jobs where they need people interaction, high, level of, cognition, activities. These type of activities, we will need more of humans doing them because the machines wouldn't be able to do them. We will lose the repetitive one. We will potentially gain the, the more cognitive, the more, people interaction one. Whether this balance in or out, it depends in which country you are and which sector you are. For example, also it's not, the impact is not going to impact every single one, the same one. So for example, women may be more impacted than men. So if we take the example of financial services or banks, for example, I can't remember the exact, the studies and, the reference. But there have been studies that have been made in financial services that shows, particularly at banks, that most of the repetitive work, at clerks and, this type of, work that gets repetitive and, procedure, most of those jobs are done by women. So if we are going to use those repetitive work, there will be more women who will lose their job in the financial sector. So this is where you cannot give like a definitive answer. So there will be some losses, there will be some gain, and then it depends on which sector you are and which country you are. That will, kind of like give more, the outcome, whether you will be impacted or not.
You touched on extremely critical topic, exactly. Because we don't always think about algorithm, right? The way it rates you, the way it reads you, the way it, yes, provides recommendation, but most importantly, the way it pushes opportunity. Either it's watching the next movie, or like you said, I didn't think about it. Like, some of the jobs not going to be even considered for you. So how interesting. That leaves us with long trail thoughts, right? How we upskilling ourselves, how we really thinking for ourselves first. So algorithm read us in a way that we want to position ourselves in the world, don't you think?
Yeah. And, it starts with the awareness, this was like, among the services, in Mindsense Global, I put a lot of effort because I'm really passionate about the AI. So I put a lot of effort in the AI education. We have to educate ourselves, whether as me as an AI practitioner or as like, a member of the public. Obviously you don't need to know AI by heart, every single detail, but like some awareness, is very helpful. So the more aware of it, the more kind of like, better things will happen, because then I will use the technology in a good way. Because for me, AI is not bad and AI is not good. It's the way we human use it that makes it either good or bad. And for us to use it in a good way, we need first to understand it.
Loving it, Djamila. Yes, absolutely. You're speaking of the roles around AI. I just read a recent Gartner report about AI roles and responsibilities. And what's your take on this? That there are multiple specialities, right, within the department handling AI. So let me give you an example. Data engineer, data scientist, AI architect, machine learning engineer, and I'm sure there is a long list, right, of those professions even. So what's your take? Are we really at very early stage of developing these new roles?
For me, I have like two split opinions in that. So in one hand, let's start with the positive one. So the positive thing is you don't have to be really kind of like a tech person to be in AI. Obviously, AI is like a huge sphere, and then there is kind of obviously there is the techie bit of it, an area specialized for the people who know by heart, those machine learning algorithms, or the people who do code, but you don't have to have those skills. If you don't have those skills, then you can still be involved in AI around the ethics, around the principle, around transparency, accountability. That around you ask, and I know that you are passionate about the human interaction. The human interaction bit, the legal aspect bit. There are like so many aspects in AI that you don't have to be really really techy to get involved with AI. So that's the good news. If you are interested in AI, there are like so many opportunities for you to get in without having the technical aspect. Now the negative bit, the thing that I don't like, and this is kind of more about the techie bit, I know that there is already confusion around what is AI, and I sometimes don't like it when I see that now, someone has decided to introduce a new term or a new concept, and it is not really a new thing. It's just like another label. So I think whereas it's good to have those different distinctions, sometimes in practice, all those things, they got muddled, into each other. If you are like working in a very big, FTSE company, you may have a split between someone doing only the data engineering and another one doing the data science and another one specializing in ML. But in reality, especially if you're like a small company, it's the same person who will be involved in all of that. So I'm splitting that. I think it helps to have some refined details between the roles. It's definitely plus, but I think we shouldn't do a lot of it, because then we may just add to the confusion. And I think we already have enough confusion. We don't need to add unnecessary ones.
And silos, right? Silos. In 2 decades, I'm in technology business, right? We're always overcoming those barriers, departmental barriers, the silos within the teams.
Absolutely.
So adding new roles, right? A new silos not gonna give us what we want.
Yeah, and if you ask different people, obviously we'll have different. I'm only talking about my own opinion. So I know there are like people who think that maybe the AI people or the data science people, whoever, kind of all those different now specialities should sit in AI. My opinion is totally the opposite of that. For me, I'm talking about for me, AI is a way of thinking. And for me, kind of this, and I think for me, this type of people, they should really sit in a business. I'm not talking about necessarily the really techie bit, the one who codes, but differently, because for you to identify an opportunity in the business that will last. So we're not talking about something that will only be an experiment and will fail after a while. You really need to understand the technology, but you also need to understand the business. It has to start with the business, and the best way is to have these people sitting in the business. The other compromise is to have them sitting somewhere in between, in between the business and the pure IT.
And it's all about communication, by the way.
Absolutely.
Every technology conversation I'm having, it comes to human communications. Because this one part of the business is not understanding the pain points of other part, or even within same team, right? No technology help you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wow, Djamila. So we touched on so many important topics there, from futuristic, trends to really very practical and pragmatic angle. So thank you so very much for this talk today. Let's leave our audience with a few takeaways. Would you close with some key moments that you think worth thinking about when we're addressing, all the different elements of AI universe we're in?
I think when you think about AI, so for me, my advice is, always think of it as a tool, as a mean to an end. Always start with the problem, never start with the tool or the technology. And for me, I think kind of going forward, if we can have the right awareness and the right education, we could really see an acceleration of the uptake of AI going forward. AI has a huge potential to make our lives and our businesses a lot better, more efficient, but it all goes down into how they're applied. So we need to find a way to apply it in a good way, in a way that lasts enough. So kind of thinking about the governance of it, the accountability of it. And for AI to really shine in the future, there are like 2 points that needs to be addressed. One we touched on is, the whole debate around the ethics, to transparency, accountability. But there is another more important element that keeps now increasing, which is the carbon footprint, the sustainability element of AI. Obviously, it's not applicable to every single algorithm or methods within AI, but if you are using deep learning, especially if you are using those big complex, models, billions of parameters, your carbon footprint is going to be very, very huge. So going forward, we need to take the sustainability element and the carbon footprint element of AI, and to find a way, to make it, smarter and lower.
What a wonderful way to finish the conversation today. Djamila, thank you so very, very much for this insightful talk. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.